Hey everyone, and thanks for watching this video. This is me tackling day one of Advent of Code 2022 using Lua, a programming language I've touched a little bit, but I'm keen to learn a bit more of and get more familiar with, hence doing this video. This is very much a raw video. I'm not a Lua expert. I haven't practiced this ahead of time, so hopefully you'll see how I work through the problem, use my tools to help me debug errors, and spend a bunch of time Googling for help as well. Enjoy. So what I thought I would do to try and improve my Lua skills to be working with NeoVim is to try and do some Advent of Code in Lua and bring you along with me by putting these videos on YouTube. Full disclosure, I have done some of these Advent of Code challenges. I've been streaming them on Twitch, so I'll put a link on the screen now, where you can come and join me, and we've been using the programming language Elm for that. But I've been working on some NeoVim plugins and generally getting a bit more familiar with NeoVim and how to use its Lua configuration. But I wanted to get a bit more familiar with Lua as a programming language separately. So I thought I'd take Advent of Code, which I have already done a few of, and try and redo them using Lua. So this is learning in Lua with Advent of Code. I haven't prepared these videos in that I haven't looked up solutions in Lua. I haven't coded in Lua yet. So I really am starting this from scratch with you all. So if we zoom in on the text here, the first challenge for Advent of Code is that the elves have these food items. And this list of lines represents multiple elves and the amount of food they have. So this first elf has 6,000 calories in their sort of bag, if you like. And a new line indicates a new elf. And then we have this elf that has 4,000. This elf has these two, and this one, these three, this one, that one. And so the challenge here, first and foremost, is to figure out the first elf, all these calories and so on. The elves would like to know how many calories are being carried by the elf carrying the most calories. So the first thing to do is to change this into some form of data structure where we know for a given elf with a given ID, which can be an index here, we know how many calories they have. But before we do any of that, we need to figure out how best to work with this data in Lua. So what I'm going to do is copy this sample data, and we go into Vim. I'm going to rename hello.lua to day1.lua. And we're going to just paste in this data. And then what I think we want to do is define a function. Let's call it local sample input. And functions have an end, don't they? And then we need to return a string. And I think in Lua, if you do double braces, it will give us a multi-line string. See, I've also got style Lua running automatically for us. Unused function, unused local sample input. Okay, but this is a string, I think. So if I were to run print bracket sample input, and if we were to execute that over here, so if we go Lua day1.lua, we do get that string. Okay, so it's a bit of a shame that the syntax highlighting goes off here. What if I do that? It's a bit better. Okay. So in Lua, multi-line strings can be created with this double brace. I think Lua as well is camel case rather than snake case. Really, this doesn't even need to be a function, can it? We can literally just do that. Get rid of the end there. And I think that would have the same effect. It's that now we don't call that. Let's just clear this out. Okay, so that still works. So now we need to start working through this input. Yeah, so Vim definitely struggles here because it thinks both these braces match with the opening one over here, which is a little bit peculiar. Anyway, it doesn't matter for now. And so what we need to do is we need to change this into really an array of total counts. Now, I know that Lua doesn't have arrays, it just has tables, which can be used with integer-based keys. So let's create a function, local part1. Okay, and so we're going to take our sample input, and we're going to need to split it on new lines. So this is my first search, Lua split string new line. Okay, so we have to use gmatch to do it. Wow. So as a string into an array, you can use something like this. Okay, so we have to match on new lines. Okay, we're going to need to do this a lot. I'm going to take this person's Reddit code and we're going to paste it in. So we'll go split string on new lines string. No, let's do that. Input string. I don't know if there's any benefit to this local function syntax versus local part1 equals function. Okay, so let's just do lines equals split string on new lines, and we're going to give it our sample input. I'm going to print these lines, and we're going to call part1. Okay, and this is what I thought would happen. We get this table, but Lua by default won't give us a nice way of printing the table. It just gives us sort of the table's reference or its ID. So what we need to do now is actually figure out how to print it. So I'm going to create myself a little help function called print table array. I'm going to call it a table array here because we are inserting just items into the table, which makes it feel more like an array. If we want to debug key value tables, we'll do that separately when we have a problem that calls for it. Let's call this input table. Okay, and I think what we can do is do for key value in pairs. Is it pairs? It does take a table. Do I want I pairs? It's a function. I don't really know how to read these definitions thus far. So it's going to take an input table. Let's Google this as well then. Lua I pairs. For IV and I pairs A do. Okay, that's perfect. That looks like exactly what we want. This and that. So key value in I pairs do and print key value. Okay, so then let's change print to print table array lines. Okay, great. So we have all these lines. Interestingly, we have lost the empty lines between them, which I think is going to be quite important. Yeah, so this gmatch is matching anything that isn't just a new line. But we could really do with keeping those lines, really, don't we? So we need to figure out a regex that's going to allow us to do that, because we need the empty lines. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we don't know how to stop dealing with one elf and start dealing with the next elf. What was that person's suggestion? Okay, that has done it, but I don't really understand how that's doing it. So we're taking our input string, we're putting a new line, an extra new line on the end. I don't know why we would want to do that. No, we don't need to do that. Okay, and then we're matching dot minus. Does minus mean that it may not have to exist? So if I were to delete that and do dot new line, I just get zeros. So we need to understand in Lua what this dot minus, or is that just a generic regex thing? Doesn't really explain what this does, what the dot minus does. Here we go. Okay, repetition. Match the previous character 0 or more times, as few times as possible. Okay, great. So dot, I think, means anything. Yeah, right. We're going to assume dot means anything because it almost certainly does. And then what we need to do then is the minus makes it match as fewer times as possible. So it's saying match the minimum amount of stuff you can before finding a new line. And this can be nothing. So that's why it then maintains the empty lines. Okay, good. That's useful to know. So now we have all those lines with the space. We can print them out as well. We have something that looks about right. For a table array here as well, I don't think we really need the key. So let's just print the value. Can I do that? Okay, great. So now we have this array. We need to go through them and build up our table of counts for elves. So I'm going to say create a local called elf calories. And I think this is how we create an empty table. And then we're going to go for key, which we don't care, and value in the pairs of our lines. And I'm just going to print the value here. We'll get rid of that print there. That gives us those. Okay. Can we say if value is an empty line? Is it then? Let's just print empty line. So if this works, we should see 4 empty lines, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 empty lines. Okay. And we're going to start our table with 1 entry in it, which is 0. And what we're going to do then is when we go over each elf's calories, if we hit an empty line, we're going to create a new entry in the table with a count of 0 and move on. Else, we're going to take the last value in the list at the moment and add the current value to it. So this bit is easy. If we get an empty value, then we need to table.insert into our elf calories. I'm going to insert a 0. So if I do this and at the end we do print table array elf calories, we get a bunch of zeros. That's good. Else, what we need to do is find the last item in the table, add value to it after converting value to an integer. String dot int to int to I to there's to string. No, there's no to integer. Okay, let's go to Google. Lua string to int to number. Okay, excellent. To number value. Let's say that value as number then. Okay, and then we do table dot. Is there a last? No, we could slice. I wonder if slice takes negative numbers. So Lua table last element. Okay, so we can get the length of a table and then get the thing at that index. Does that make sense? So last count in list is table, and then it's elf calories is our table. And in Lua, I read about this. You can do the pound symbol followed by the table to get the number of items in that. And in Lua, tables are 1 index, so we don't need to do the -1 that you have to in most languages because the first item in the table has the index 1, not 0. So what we can now actually say is elf calories at the last entry, not +1, is going to equal the last count in list plus our value as number. And I need to keep remembering that I need to put local in front of these. Okay, if I now run that, great, nice. So the first elf has 6,000, second 4,000, then 11, then 24,000, then 10,000. Okay, awesome. So now we've done that, we need to find out what advent of code actually wants. Find the elf carrying the most calories. Okay. So now we've got the table we need to sort for the most calories. So Lua sort table numerically. If this function is not provided, sort uses the default less than operation. Okay, so let's just see what happens if we get that. So rather than do elf calories, we're going to do table.sort elf calories. Oh, bad argument to iPairs. Table expected got nil. Oh, does table.sort not return it? Does it mutate it in place? Yeah, okay, so it sorts it in place. So that's done it that way. So we could now just grab the last item, but what it looks like this table.sort does take a comparator function A and B. So I feel like we should be able to compare it. If comp is given, it must be a function that receives two of the elements and returns true when the first is less than the second. Okay, so let's try this then. So we're going to define a function. Oh, there was a little snippet for me there. A and B, that's fine. So can I just return B greater than A? Wrong way around. B less than A? Yeah, great, okay. So we're sorting it in place, and then we're going to take the very first item, and that should be our answer. So elf calories at the first index is 24,000. So that's correct. How many total calories is that elf carrying? Now that's the answer for our basic input, but what advent of code gives us is this much bigger input. Now, if you're signed into advent of code, your value will be different to mine, so I'm not going to ruin the answer for you. So let's just define down here local actual input. It's going to be a very long string. And so what we do now is wherever I put sample input, we're going to change to actual input. Undefined global actual input. I've used it there, haven't I? Is this because it's got to be defined first? Yes, okay. So we get 72,070 as our answer. So let's take a look. 72,070. Oh. Return to day one. Oh, okay. I think I hit enter then. There was a bug in advent of code and it didn't realize what it was doing. Anyway, the first half, your puzzle answer was this. This is completed. Great. Okay, part two. By the time you calculate the answer to the elves, they've already realized the elf carrying the most calories might run out of snacks. To avoid this, they would like to know the total calories carried by the top 3 elves. Okay, so we should add up, rather than taking the first one. Ooh. I was trying to go back there. It's jumped me into another project. There we go. Okay, so rather than outputting that, we need to count up the calories of the top 3 elves now. So I mean, this is literally going to be plus elf calories 2 plus elf calories 3. I think that's all there is to this one. Yeah. Okay. So we can do that fairly easily, I think, and then we'll move on to our second puzzle. So let's change sample input again to actual input. We get this number. Let's paste that in there and hit submit. Done. Excellent. So that's day one in Lua solved.